I, that's where the pulling my head out of my ass came to came to be. I mean,
Uh,
that was what I needed to do. I liken it to a jet taking off or a fighter taking off from an aircraft carrier. They head out and then they go down a little bit first
yeah.
before they go back up. And I feel like that's kind of what it's like to get sober, because there's that down part where, okay, I'm doing this, and I'm not drinking and I'm not drugging, but my Lord, this sucks. This is not fun. Um, and I think that's the crucial piece.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. Today is another fantastic day for an interview. I've got Daryl Dittmer with me, a man who not just looks ruggedly handsome with the same haircut as me, but also a man who has gone through the trials and tribulations of life and has made many choices that maybe, just maybe, with hindsight, he was able to learn a lot from. Because sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And today I've got a man who has realized that when you stop fighting, the life becomes a very, very different story. Daryl, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Stephan. I appreciate you having me. Great to be here.
My goodness, Daryl, who was the man in the past, not the author, not the man who is nowadays on shows and shares humbly his story, but who was the man who was growing up, who was the teenager who wanted to leave a mark on the world?
Well, my beginnings were in the Midwest of the United States, which is known for Protestant work ethic and just sort of farming and things like that. So I grew up with a very strict upbringing and a very work ethic oriented um, younger days, and it was great. It was what my parents learned from their parents, and they taught it to us. And there was a
Mm,
lot of expectation, and there was a lot of
mm,
a lot of desire to have us believe certain things and do certain things and don't run off the path. And here's your box of things that you're allowed to believe. And so that's what I carried into my teen years, and I got involved in drinking and drugs, and I got involved to the point where it became a real issue. And
mm,
from just the perspective of trouble in my life, trouble internally, trouble with all my relationships. I was lying, cheating, stealing. I was not a good person. I was not the person that I was raised to be. And through an intervention, more or less, I was put into a treatment center for 30-day alcohol and drug treatment, and that's the point for me where I decided that something needed to change, and I wanted to be able to. At that point, I didn't want to be able to give something to the world. I just wanted to be able to give something to myself
mm,
and cope and look people in the eye and
mm.
have conversations and do the simple things. I wanted to do the simple things. And then over time that morphed into, thank God, me, wanting to help others.
Beautiful. What was hot in the Midwest in the, I assume, 80s? Um, what were the drugs available to you? What was going?
Back at that time, it was a long time ago. It's funny because I joke I got sober before wine coolers came out, and I got sober before I was legally allowed to drink too.
Well, you were an
So it
early
was
starter. Come on, there was some
yeah.
work ethic there.
I put in my time. Um, Yeah, it started off with drinking and then weed and then, shrooms and hallucinogens and cocaine and acid, mescaline, all, those things that we could get our hands on back at that time. And
so anything that went, I was about to say, so anything went. Okay, cool. What was happening when you took those medications, when you took the alcohol? Why? How did it make you feel?
It made me feel like I didn't have to worry about anything else. I didn't have to think about how I felt. I didn't think about what I had to do. I didn't think about the expectations that were on me. The most amazing and predictable thing happened the first time I tried weed. I got high, and it allowed me to escape. And at that time in my life, I'm not exactly sure what I was escaping from, but I do know that when I was here and the drugs and the alcohol brought me over here, I would much rather be over here. And that was how it worked.
Okay. And that's always the thing, isn't it? I have yet to meet a teenager, even if I had a time machine and going back in any time, find me one teenager who is feeling all right and who's feeling that he belongs and who's feeling that everything is all right. No teenager ever does that. So there's all these hormones raging around in us. And then, of course, some of us have got some genetic predispositions. You were pointing out towards more stricter upbringing and clear rules, yet often behind the facade, behind the white fence, things don't go so great. Was alcohol a steady part of your family?
It was not. I know that my dad had some interesting escapades when he was younger. He was in the military and, that sort of thing. And growing up, my dad was a mechanic. So in his younger years, there was definitely alcohol involved. And I had heard there were certain people in my family who I had never met, who had issues with alcohol and that sort of thing. But in our immediate time and as I was growing up, not something that reared its head.
Good. Okay. No, that's cool. And it is what it is, isn't it? It is, even if you have a strong gene pool of alcoholism or mental health problems, doesn't mean to say that it then will come out. It just sets you potentially up for it. There's so many other factors that lead to you either really, really, really liking drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, sugar, whatever your fix is or combination of fixes is. So no, it's cool. Interesting. So here you were a young man. How was school?
School was great when I was younger, but then it deteriorated rapidly as I got involved in the drinking and the drugs, because the progression is so interesting and so crazy, because things just fall away. Things that used to matter just fall away. Things that we need to be responsible for, and what I could have, and I don't like to should on myself, but things that I should have been responsible for, they just fell away. So school was not, it wasn't something that I cared about. And my grades reflected that. Actually, the vice principal of the school that I went to, the high school, he told me at one point that the only reason we're graduating you is to get you out of here. So that's how school was going.
Okay. But isn't that typical? Because the once an addiction gets hold of you, those things that are of maybe social importance and that may be of real importance to you, they're falling by the wayside. And that's actually one of the hallmarks of addiction, that you do something despite the fact that it is not good for you, that despite the fact that you are actually quite willingly harming yourself. in the past have called drinking and basically suicide in installments. And ultimately, it's probably not so far off. Wow, man. Um, who guided you towards the admission, towards the rehab? Who had the power over you to actually allow you to become a new version of yourself?
It was my parents basically, or my dad was somewhat ambivalent, I suppose, and although that's what he showed in terms of his out picturing, he was just kind of this tough guy, and who expected things, but he wasn't real vocal unless he needed to be, and that was a bad day for everyone. So my mom was very much involved in, just trying to track me down and figure me out and see what's going on. And there was a day when she told me, and this was a just not a good thing, but she said, I used to look in your eyes and all I saw was evil. And I thought, wow, that's a big statement to hear from your mom. So,
wow.
And I don't think I was evil, but I wasn't intentionally being good either. I was headed down the path. So they set up an appointment with a counselor, and they said, go to see this counselor. And this was when I was 18 years old, and go see this counselor, or it's basically over. You're out, you're done, have a good life. And that was a period of time between when they asked me to go to the appointment and when I actually decided to show up. It was frightening for me. And I didn't like the feeling, and I didn't want to go, but there was something that compelled me to go talk to this guy. And my plan was, I'm just going to lie like I've been doing with everybody else. And I'm just going to BS this guy and do the best I can to get out of it. And so that was my plan. And I went to go see him, and I ended up showing up for that appointment. And first thing he said to me was, you can't lie to me. You can't BS me. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to know it. Don't even try. And
you can't bullshit.
I was 18.
You can't bullshit a bullshitter.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
The guy had a history too.
So yeah, he did. He was in sobriety. So that was I was intimidated, and I told him, I was as honest with him as I could be at that point in my life. And that was the beginning for me.
And that's so beautiful that you say it this way, as honest as I can be at that stage in my life, because healing comes in layers. And there are so many things that you do not know. Most of us have no idea about core beliefs or about the reasons why we drink or why we use. Most of us have no ideas about the going-ons, about all those thoughts that are running through our head. I mean, there are 60 to 80,000 thoughts every single day. Yet we often enough focus on 1 or 2 or 5, and that makes our day or breaks our day. Yet there's so much going on, but we have no idea about that. And here you are at age 18, for crying out loud. You don't know you're back from your front at that age. And now you suddenly are supposed to know it all in your head, what's going on. Well, if you had known what was going on, you probably wouldn't be in that state. Okay, so it is. So I love it the way you expressed it. What was your memory from rehab? Rehab in the 80s would have been very different than rehab in 2013, 2014 when I went into it. What was rehab like then?
It was at a hospital program in Detroit, Michigan. And so the first 3 days was detox, and that was not a fun time. And the only thing I remember of that part is it had to be part of the the detoxing, I guess, but I was being pulled from my bed to the floor, and I felt like I was being pulled down into some sort of a evil place, like a hell or something like that. That was just how it felt. It was really creepy. It was really scary, and it wasn't a dream, and it wasn't necessarily happening in reality, although it could have been. But when I sort of came to and woke up, and I have no idea how long it lasted, but I was actually off the bed, being down toward the floor. Half my body was off the bed facing the floor, and I woke up and sort of snapped myself out of it and went to sleep, I think. But rehab back then, and I don't know the difference between, then and now, but it was sharing, and it was honesty, and it was admitting my BS, and it was doing all the things that we need to do for the rest of our lives, but I was just getting off the ground, right? So again, as far as my recollection goes, it was, I was being as honest as I could be about all of my own bullshit. And it was the beginning of me pulling my head out of my ass.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
It was two things I took out of rehab, and I think these are the important things. One, I was introduced to the 12 steps, which to me are just a roadmap. They're a roadmap to take my life to a different place. And the other thing I got out of rehab was I got hope. I got hope from seeing people who had it much more together than I did. And I thought, you know what? I think I can do this.
Beautiful. Well, exactly the same with me. It's so beautiful to hear that. Here in My Steps to Sobriety, that's the second edition here. The third edition is just about to come out. Should be out actually by the time that this video airs. So it's exciting. But in there, I write about the ideal rehab, and there's the story in there of one of my inmates who was with me in my rehab, and she very successfully completed our rehab. Yet she had been to numerous ones before, including one where she was in a 9-month rehab on a farm. And really, when you actually look at it, this was basically slave labor. She was basically picking fruit and picking veggies. And then on a Saturday, they had 2 hours of discussion, and that was it. So rehab is not rehab. So therefore, I'm asking for that, because there are many people out there who say, well, I was in rehab and it didn't work. And when you then sort of peel back the layers, you realize, my goodness, this is definitely not rehab. This is whatever this is, money-making machine or something like that, or really something
labor
that should,
camp.
Yeah, exactly, that should be forbidden. So here you go. So no, I'm so pleased for you that you ended up first time around already in amongst a group of people who have been there, done that, have vomited on the T-shirt. And I think that was exactly the same with me. That was the biggest eye-opener when I suddenly realized the nurse, the counselor, everyone in my surroundings there had or was or is an addict of sorts, and they all got their shit together. Wow. So there was hope. Exactly the same thing. So therefore, it's so beautiful to hear that story from you, to hear that insight. Wow. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But then again, alcohol is or addiction in general terms, is a chronic disease. There are people who say, no, it's not. You can just think positive and do things, etc., and then everything will be fine. Then you can start drinking again. Yeah, about that. Was there the temptation later for you to go back to drinking, to go back to using? And if so, did you follow?
For sure.
Did you have relapses?
I did not. I definitely had the temptation. I definitely had the desire. I would say probably the first between 2 and 5 years was difficult from that perspective. And one of the big reasons it was difficult is because I was so young, and everybody around me
Yeah.
I got rid of a lot of the players that were involved, or I'd say
Yeah.
most of the players that were involved leading up to treatment. But,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So tempted, but didn't go there.
Wow. Because normally the relapse rate in the first year is at least 80%, 90%, thereabouts. And in all fairness, a relapse is not a bad thing, because you get very quickly reminded in the form of a 2x4 over the forehead that it's not such a great thing. And I certainly had a relapse in my first year. Luckily, instead of being guided towards guilt and shame, I was guided towards, okay, what went wrong? How can we do better next time? And that was actually a really beautiful thing. So it is, I think there's something to be said about having a relapse in a positive way. It's not something that you need to be ashamed of. You only need to be ashamed of it if you don't learn from it. I think that for that you should be slapped. But otherwise, cool. Oh, fantastic. So now you were dry, no longer using drugs, but the reasons that you were using or the way it made you feel, well, that was still there. So how the hell did you deal with that? There was a reason that you used.
That's where the pulling my head out of my ass came to be. I mean, that was what I needed to do. I liken it to a jet taking off or a fighter taking off from an aircraft carrier. They head out and then they go down a little bit first before they go back up. And I feel like that's kind of what it's like to get sober, because there's that down part where, okay, I'm doing this, and I'm not drinking and I'm not drugging, but my Lord, this sucks. This is not fun. And I think that's the crucial piece, in terms of figuring that out. So I did what they told me to do. And I saw people who were sober and there weren't a ton of them. A lot of people were still interestingly messed up, even in sobriety. At least that's how it appeared to me.
I love it. I love it.
It's right. It's true. And I tried. I looked for the people who I thought were experiencing some semblance of fulfillment or contentment or peace, or they just looked like they had it together and acted like they had it together, and they weren't being clowns anymore. So I navigated myself to those people, and those are the people that I wanted to learn from, and so that's what I decided to do, and one of those happened to be my sponsor.
Beautiful. And that's where you've got that overlap of on the one hand, dealing with addiction and healing those traumas that often enough are contributing to you trying to escape your reality. And then on the other side, actually trying to build up a life that is worthwhile living, and trying to go out there. And that's the kind of self-improvement, although that word in its own right has nowadays got not so nice connotations. It seems to be a cliche more than anything else. But in reality, every single day, there are steps that we can do to lead us away from addiction and maybe lead us away to a more meaningful life versus doing nothing and bobbing on like a cork on an ocean, in the stormy ocean, and see where we go. You obviously sought a mentor, which is fantastic, or you sought probably also other people. There was a saying, if you surround yourself with 6 millionaires, it's very hard for you not to become financially wealthy. And if you surround yourself with 6 painters, then probably sooner or later you will start drawing or painting or whatever it is. So who else was part of your power team? Who else did you use as models or as people to inspire you?
There were certain people around the tables, certain people around meetings, and interestingly to me, and it's something that I'm still fascinated by as I move on in life, but people come into our lives, right, because of who we are and who we become. So I find it amazing that when I'm drinking and drugging, you just can't believe the band of misfits that show up on the doorstep, and they're like, hey, we do that too. So and right, and that's what happens. And so in sobriety, and I don't want to say quality versus non-quality in terms of sobriety, because that's not necessarily the case, but people are in different places in sobriety, and some people are just some people are there to be sober, and some people are there to recover and grow and change and become something different. And as I surrounded myself with people like that, other people like that came into my life. I had a boss. I was doing some framing, some carpentry, and his name was Andy, and he became a mentor of mine and kind of a hero of mine. And he was sober a little longer than I was, and he was serious about it. And and he's still sober today. And so those are the people that I gravitated towards. And there aren't that many. I think it's so important, especially if somebody's coming in, to sobriety, to look for those people who, not the money, not the, popularity, none of that stuff. Who is content, who is at peace, who can help you get there. And so those are the people that I hung around, and some of them are still in my life, and some of them are not in my life, but anymore. But they were there for that time when, I needed them, they needed me, whatever it was. And, like we pass through each other's lives, and we move on.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that's the intriguing thing, because it's a journey. And especially if you are serious about this journey and you're open, and you open your soul, you open your mind up to new modalities of healing, to new modalities of of increasing your state, what do I want to say? The kind of frequency, the kind of your own well-being. Yeah, let's call it well-being. When you're constantly working on becoming a better version of yourself, you are growing. There's no way around it. Whilst there are many people who are stagnant, they are sober, but they are stagnant, and that is so hard. And we see that in AA groups. We see that in many other places. Last year I was on a cruise, and I had not been to a meeting really for 10 years, because I felt that the meetings were not actually giving me very much. So, but I thought, no, I'd go to an AA meeting on a cruise ship. And I went there, and the first meeting was a bit odd. Okay, we're all feeling odd, new place, etc. Second meeting around, I tried to challenge the 5 or 6 guys who were there, because they were all 20 years sober or so. And I said, hey guys, we are here with such an expertise, 20 years. Come on, we all teach each other a skill. Right now, right here, 5 minutes, everyone, teach me a skill. None of them could do that. None of them could give me one single skill. And I thought I was going to teach them breathing technique. I had become last year, became a breathwork yoga teacher. So I thought, yeah, okay, we'll do a breathing exercise. No, nothing. It's only awareness and prayer. These were the 2 things that all of them were doing. So ultimately, none of them had evolved any further in their skill set. And I thought that was actually quite sad, but that was reflective of many, many previous experiences. Now, not everyone is there, but I think you, Daryl, are very different because you have grown. You are putting yourself out there, and in order to do so, you have taken on new challenges. By doing so, you grow. Your self-worth grows. You evolve, and that's beautiful. Tell us about that story. I mean, because you are now a very different man than just the person who went to, still licking his wounds, went to the AA in the first instance.
Yes. I didn't come from a family with much money. My dad was a mechanic. My mom took care of us kids. And so when I got sober, I wanted to do something different. So none of my family had graduated from a college or university. And I decided when I got sober that I wanted to go to college. And I purposefully had not done that, obviously, as I was using. So I decided I wanted to go to college, and there was no big expectations because nobody had gone before me. So it was like, oh, if you want to go, great. It'd be wonderful. We'll be proud of you and everything. But, that's not us. So anyway, I ended up going to college, and that was great. And something in me knew, and this is just for me, that I just wanted to get that piece of paper. I didn't want to be a corporate guy. I just wanted a piece of paper that would get me in a door and allow me to make some money. That's what I wanted to do. And I went to meetings the whole time. And that's actually where I got my sponsor, Bud, who we can chat about. He's a phenomenal guy, but I went to college, and then I got out of college, and I actually graduated with a criminal justice degree because my brother was a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer on one side. My other grandfather was a firefighter. So that was just all I knew. I didn't know business. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know anything like that. I didn't know the difference between wholesale and retail when I got out of college. So anyway, taught me a lot. But I decided to do carpentry and framing, which is what I had done through college. And that's what I did after college. And then somebody asked me to be involved in sales. So without taking a ton of time, to go through the entire story, I tried a lot of things. I tried different sales things. I left town. I moved to Boston to try a new sales opportunity. Certain things went well, certain things didn't. I tried and failed many times. And then finally I got involved with a company out in Boston, and I was 28, 29, something like that. And it kind of stuck. I wanted to have a situation where I could kind of write my own ticket. And how that situation started was I was started on a $30,000 a year draw, which meant they'd pay me $30,000, but I had to pay it back if I didn't make it up with sales. So if I didn't make it up with sales, I owed them. So that was fun, and not a lot, no pressure there. But anyway, it was difficult. I didn't have much money at all. I was broke when I went to Boston. I wasn't much less than broke as I was building this business. And that was just it. It was the ups and downs and the trying and the failing and the taking the risks and, all of those things. And I've done that for a long time. I've bought properties now. I've owned businesses. I've been a partner in large firms, and there's been a lot of things that have happened because I was willing to take risks, because I was willing to get my butt kicked around a little bit and just not quit. And, those are the things that I tell people now. You don't have to judge the difficult versus the non-difficult. Just do the stuff. Just do the stuff. Do the work. And
exactly.
And the work is what gets you there. So the difficult things, just like a relapse, as you were mentioning earlier, Stephan, it doesn't have to be a failure. It can be the springboard to help you go forward.
Absolutely.
And that's what the failures have been in my life. And I don't even look at them as failures anymore. I just have to have something to call them. So we'll call them that. And, but they were also the stepping stones that brought me to a place today where, you know, I don't have to eat potatoes. I don't live in a basement apartment with, you know, cockroaches and whatever else was in there. And I don't have to look under the couch cushions for money to get to my next appointment. So something worked out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You took action. And I think that is the key thing that we keep forgetting. We're often sort of fixated on finding the golden nugget of wisdom on a very highest mountain, whilst in reality just showing up in your life, well, that's 80% of success. And if we then actually add in a stepwise approach, that you actually dream who you want to be when you grow up, and then actually turn that into a vision where you actually become crystal clear. Okay, you want to become rich. Well, what does rich mean? Well, I don't know. Well, then you will never become rich. But if you say, I want to make $1 million a year, however realistic that is for you at the moment, well, if that is a goal in this, a clear, measurable goal, well, that's something you can achieve. So you're changing this vague dream into a crystal clear vision, and then you take action to make it a mission. And that is beautiful. So you took action. Now, it sounds a little bit like that you were just open to opportunities and life threw you around a bit, but you recognized opportunities and you took them as they came. And sometimes that's life. That's what life does. Nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, the best laid plans typically go to the moment your plan faces reality. So I think that's the other thing. Wow. Okay. What a success story. And coming full circle, you were looking out for those people who were content when you were younger. Are you content now?
Very much so. Very much so. The seas are calm.
Beautiful. Beautiful. There is still waiting. There are still many storms waiting, rest assured. They're just over the horizon. You just can't see them yet. And I think that is the other thing that we need to realize. Just because you got sober, just because you got yourself in a beautiful, steady state where right now things are fine, tomorrow that might very much change. But the sheer fact that you have gone through so many trials and tribulations, Daryl, that's made you a man who's far more resilient, who's far more able to weather a storm. And we are not challenging the universe to, is that all you can do?
We're not begging for any.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I had yesterday a meeting with my psychologist, and she sort of said, because I was saying, well, I've gone through a lot of shit in recent months, and I've grown a lot out of it, for which I'm grateful. And she said, you don't have to go through trauma to grow. You can grow through joy. And she planted that seed in my head, and I thought, that would make a change. Maybe I should try that. So exactly. So whilst trauma is waiting around the corner, let's grow. Let's grow by us connecting. You connected with first through your rehab, then through mentorship, then through choosing the right people in your life. We can connect like that right now. We two are connecting. Two men who actually have got many, many similar stories. We just didn't know it. I come from a very blue-collar background. No one expected me to be a doctor. No one had gone to college or university. I could go on. There were so many parallels in our stories. It was a bit frightening, actually. But it just shows. Here we are. Meeting each other today for the first time. Yet I venture to say that actually this is probably not the last time that we interact, because we've been honest with each other. We've been open with each other. We were authentic. We were, I guess, humble. We showed integrity. All those kind of things are very, very powerful things to do. And there are not so many people out there who through trials and tribulations have arrived at that place. Not that we are perfect, we are no freaking saints, that's for sure. And
No.
just wait until tomorrow when we both fuck up. That's absolutely fine. Okay, but we will learn from it, and we will learn from it. And because we have done so over the last years, and in your case, decades, that is, yeah. Have you figured out who you want to be when you grow up?
I haven't. No, I haven't. And it's more fun that way, honestly.
Touche.
It is because there's things in store for me that I have no idea. And when you talked about goals earlier, and I agree with you, and I live my life more from an intention perspective, where
Exactly.
I drop intentions into the universe or the primordial soup or whatever the heck you want to call it, and then I do the work. And so I have no idea how I'm going to get there. I don't know what the road is. I don't know what the path is. But I know that I'm on a road and I'm on a path. So what do I want to be when I grow up? I don't know. But the most recent iteration of me is somebody who writes, and that's what I do now, and I love it. And tomorrow, who knows? Maybe I'll be making spaghetti and meatballs at a restaurant. I don't know. We'll find out.
Or write a book about spaghetti and meatballs. Exactly.
Or that. Yeah, or that.
We just don't know. Your book. Tell us about your book.
Well, my book is the title of my book is When I Stop Fighting, and the subtitle is The Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass. And that's what I needed to do. And I'll just tell you a little story about how the title came about. So my sponsor, whose name was Bud, and he was a guy who I met when I went to college. So I met him probably about 8 months sober, and he was the most impactful human being at that point in my life that I could have possibly imagined showing up for me. So I'm doing my life how I do it, which is wrestling, fighting, doing everything I can to screw everything up, and just rub some dirt on it, walk it off. You're not hurt if there's not a bone sticking out, all that sort of stuff. And so Bud looks at me one day as I'm wrestling with some issue, and he said, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops." And that hit me. And it didn't mean as much to me then as it has meant to me over the last several decades. But I put that in my pocket, and I put that in my little, here's one of those 5 or 10 things that impact us for the rest of our lives. And that was one of them. Yeah. And so that has such an incredibly huge meaning to me now. But at that time, it was a nugget of wisdom that I needed, because I started to get an idea that I'm the one that fights me. It's not the world. I don't need to fight the world. I just need to deal with me.
And also, we forget the power that statement has, because it's often to fight the world is a tall order, and often ends up in disaster. But can you make changes to yourself? Absolutely. Will you be able to drop 50 kilograms by tomorrow? Probably not. But we often overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 5 years. If we were to put every day 5 minutes into a particular goal, and I call that the 5-minute gardener. If you were to go 5 minutes into your garden from now on, every single day, and spend 5 minutes in there, never less, never more. After a week, you see changes. After a month, your family thinks, wow, our garden looks nice. And after 3 months, you've got bus tours coming along and checking your garden out. So we can make change. We can change things within ourselves. And once we have changed ourselves, as you have, you can then start planting seeds, you then become the candle or even the torch in the darkness of others. And that's so beautiful. Daryl, for that, I'm really, really grateful. Show us your book so that people recognize it
Thank
when
you.
they're heading to Amazon. There you go. And I stop fighting. Oh, it's good. Good, man. Thank you so much for writing the book. Thank you so much for being open and honest about your journey, because by doing so, you give hope to others. And that was where we were lacking when we went into rehab. There was no hope, at least in my life. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see that there was help. I couldn't see that there was hope. Nowadays, a very, very different story. And your story highlights that so beautifully. So thank you so much for your authenticity. Daryl, you're a great man. Thank you so much for being who you are, for going out there, showing yourself, warts and all. How can people learn more about you? Where can they find you on the internet?
Thank you, Stephan. I have a website, which is daryldittmer.com, which is DARYLDITTMER.com. And you can find my book there. I just actually finished doing an audio book in my voice, which was another interesting adventure. And it was a lot of fun, actually. So my book, my audio book, and then book number 2 is going to come out in July. And so that's a place to get updates on that book, as well as it actually even snippets from that book I'm going to be sending to folks. So if you can sign up with your email, we'll send you out snippets in a monthly newsletter to get more information.
Beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. You get all the information down there. Whilst you're there, please do me the favor, press the like and the subscribe button, because this way you support my show. We get increased kind of traffic through YouTube and through other search engines. And you don't miss out on any of the beautiful guests that I've got the honor of interviewing here on my show. So life is good, however dark at the moment your own life might look like. Please don't give up, guys. If 2 numbnuts like Daryl and me can get their shit together, there's really hope for you guys. Honestly, you just need to figure out the right team, isn't it? You just need to figure out the right team and never give up. Okay, don't lose hope. I really, truly mean it. Daryl, you're an amazing man. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you, Stephan. You as well. I've enjoyed this immensely and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you again.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.